It's the start of a new week and there have been plenty of huge rumours to talk about, including the likes of Andy Robertson to Atletico Madrid, Elanga going to Newcastle, Ekitike becoming Manchester United's first choice striker, and Mbeumo being hijacked by Spurs, Nico Williams and Barcelona. Let's talk about some of these because there's some crackers in there. Let's start with Alejandro Garnacho to Arsenal. Now, this rumour really sprung out of nowhere. Manchester United reportedly want £70 million for him. Do I think United are going to get £70 million? Absolutely not. That wasn't the talk in the January window, so I'm not sure why it would be the talk in the summer window when their bargaining position feels a little bit weaker because it's become quite public he's going to leave the club. How about the fit to Arsenal, though? Because he's still only 20 years old, and yes, the goal-scoring numbers weren't amazing last year. I think it was 6 goals, 3 assists, but he still puts up huge non-penalty expected goals, takes a great volume of shots, but isn't the most creative. And I think there's a pretty clear argument to say that Gabriel Martinelli would still be the first choice left winger in that spot. I think Arsenal fans are crying out for a left winger who's going to come in and immediately be a superstar that can rival the likes of Bukayo Saka for output. Maybe a Rodrigo. I think Alejandro Garnacho's signature at that sort of fee feels pretty unrealistic for Arsenal. I don't see... In fact, I might even put it in nope. I don't see it. Do you see it? I mean, Arsenal fans, let me know what you think about Alejandro Garnacho joining the club. I would be incredibly shocked. Let's talk about Mathys Tel staying at Tottenham Hotspur for a reported fee of £30 million, which feels like a bargain in this market when the forwards you're looking at moving, you know, the likes of Bryan Mbeumo on the market at a reported £70 million. Mathys Tel, given his age, given what we've seen of him at Bayern Munich in the limited minutes he was able to put up there in terms of goal output, creativity, and general ceiling, you think 30 million feels like a bargain. I don't think he was that impressive in the 6 months we saw of him at Tottenham, but it very rarely is for a 20-year-old to come to the Premier League in the January window and have a huge impact on a team that is struggling as a unit. I think Mathys Tel for 30 million quid is a really good move. Thomas Frank is going to love a player like Mathys Tel. You look at what he was able to do with Johan Visser, moving him slightly more centrally, getting the output there. Even players like Brennan Johnson are going to take huge steps forward. I did a whole video on who should stay and who should go last week at Tottenham under Thomas Frank, so go and watch that if you haven't already. Paul Pogba could be back in European football. It looks like he's closing in on a move to Monaco. Really, really excited to see him back kicking ball, to be honest with you, because we haven't seen him playing since, I think, late stages of 2023. That's when the ban kicked in, or at least that's when he was suspended for the drug failure. I think Paul Pogba, despite the fact he is going to have had 2 years out, is such a high-profile name to join Monaco. If they can get some semblance of even Juventus Pogba in 2023, it'll be an absolutely fine move. Reportedly, his wages are going to be extremely minimal as well. He himself has said, I'm going to take a huge pay cut to join Monaco just to get back into the European game rather than go to the likes of MLS or Saudi, which he was originally mooted to do. It's just a nice story, isn't it? Pogba back in France at a team like Monaco. I don't think it's... I'm going to put it in okay. I'm going to put it in the middle tier. How about Andy Robertson going to Atletico Madrid? This one has really picked up steam over the last 48 hours, and it looks like it could well happen for a fee in the region of £20 million, which would be pretty exceptional business for Liverpool. In my opinion, Milos Gyokeres is going to be joining the club. If Andy Robertson goes out for, let's say, half of that fee, double what they paid for him from Hull in the first place, that is remarkable business from Michael Edwards. I'm sorry. I know that he started 29 games last season and off the field is probably still very much a part of that leadership group. But you look at his overall numbers, his creativity, his progressive carries, his pressing output. They've all slowly started to decline, and rightly so. You know, this is a player who's well into his 30s now. I think if they can get a fee for him, Liverpool, with the signings they're about to make, the likes of Gyokeres, this is a really good move. And I also think it's a good move for Atletico Madrid. You know, players that a lot of people have thought might be finished in the Premier League, i.e. Keer and Trippier, have gone to Spain, gone to La Liga, and really proven that because the physical nature is slightly lower, they can really focus on refining and reshaping their game. I think Andy Robertson, even with a slightly waning physical output, will still look really strong in a well-organised and well-coached Diego Simeone defence. For me, all round, this is a really nice fit. That might mean that the move for Teo Hernandez has fallen apart though, and this is a real shocker, I think. He's still only 27 years old. Milan once reported 25 million euros. Atletico aren't willing to pay this. It feels a little bit similar to the Mike Manuel situation when he was close to going to Chelsea. It kind of fell through at the last minute. Atletico are probably in no rush. Milan maybe are because of the situation financially they're in. But I still am really surprised more clubs aren't in for Teo Hernandez at that fee. I know he didn't have his best season, but surely when I think about him across the last 4 or 5 campaigns, he's been one of Europe's best left-backs. At the international stage, he's consistently one of the best left-backs. I think overall, his game is still a pretty solid 7 or 8 out of 10, particularly from an attacking output standpoint. You know, even with the downturn last year, he was in the top 10% of European fullbacks for shot-creating actions, non-penalty expected goals, dribble success rate. He's very physical and powerful in transition. His defensive ability is maybe waned a little bit, but for 25 million euros? Come on, this is still a seriously talented player. It's not going to happen now, by the looks of it, but it would have been a really good move. Anthony Elanga is still being linked heavily over the last 7 days to Newcastle. It feels like they've fallen away in the pursuit for Bryan Mbeumo. I spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. Anthony Elanga has come to the forefront. He's still only 23 years old, Anthony Elanga, and season on season, his goal involvements have been on the climb. 14 last campaign, 17 this season, including 11 assists. I don't think the creative part of his game is taken heed of enough. He is really smart and around the box, an excellent crosser of the ball, and obviously deadly in any transitional situation. I think his profile suits Newcastle really well. You look at what Jacob Murphy was able to do last season, which was remarkable. He had a brilliant campaign, and I think there are certain aspects of his game that mirror Anthony Elanga's in his work rate, in his creativity. Anthony Elanga was putting up 0.4 assists per 90 last season. That's sort of top 5-10% of European wingers. The issue, I think, is probably the fee here. Nottingham Forest are in a powerful position. They've got European football. He's under a long-term contract. He's pretty happy in Nottingham. He's an amazing character behind the scenes. I don't think they're going to be under any pressure to sell him. But if they were, and the fee was right, yeah, I think it's a really good move to Newcastle. Usman Diamande, who I have in the past spoken about being linked to some of Europe's most elite sides, this week is being heavily linked with a move to Crystal Palace. Now, Palace are likely to lose Mark Gahey this summer. He's entered the final year of his contract unless they choose to let him run it down so he can play in the Europa League. I would personally be surprised by that. The reported target to replace him is Diamande, who has an €80 million clause at Sporting. There is some suggestion in the Portuguese press that he'll be allowed to leave for less than that, in the region of €60 million. But given his age, he's still only 21 years old, and what we've seen from him on the European stage for Sporting, in the Champions League, and in the domestic stage in Liga NOS, it is a remarkable profile. And I think really interesting between the fit of Diamande and Palace is his natural ability to play in a back three. Under Ruben Amorim, that central centre-back role, he played nearly every minute. He was very commanding physically, really good on the ball, and able to step out of the line and operate almost as a defensive midfielder. Now at Crystal Palace, Maxence Lacroix has played as the central centre-back all season, and he's been one of the best centre-backs in the league. One of the best signings of last summer. Do they move him out of position to play Mark Gahey's role, or does Diamande come in and play a slightly different position? However you dress this up, if Crystal Palace can get hold of Usman Diamande, I mean, that has to be top tier, doesn't it? What do you guys at home think? That would blow my head off. Let's talk Tottenham Hotspur and Antoine Semeno, a really dynamic forward. Often wants to operate on that left-hand side and cut in, but he's super two-footed. I've spoken about in the past his ability to take shots with both feet, come in off his right or off his left, a pretty even split. He took the most shots of any Premier League forward last season. Very dangerous ball striker. His XG numbers were really solid. His ball-carrying ability is great between the lines. But if you sign Mathys Tel, and it now looks like Heung-min Son might end up staying at the club, does Antoine Semeno operate on the right-hand side, which he's done at times because of how two-footed he is? Again, though, I think for £70 million, it would be okay. It looks like Bournemouth are in an incredibly powerful position. You know, they're going to lose Gyokeres for 40, Howson's gone for 50, they might lose Zabani for 60. they're going to have so much money that any move for Antoine Semeno is going to be eye-wateringly expensive. Iraola is going to put his foot down eventually and say, look, no more pillaging of this squad. Newcastle also interested in a move for João Pedro. Not the first time, of course. Fabrizio Romano actually gave him the here we go from Watford to Newcastle back in 2022. Don't know whether you guys remember that, but it was about £30 million. Now, this is an interesting one because Callum Wilson is going to leave the club, or he might even have left the club at this stage. So clearly they want a support role for Alexander Isak, who isn't necessarily the fittest. And in my mind, João Pedro is quite a nice option. Yes, he has traditionally played as a second striker at Brighton. I think a lot of his best work has been done off of Danny Welbeck. In his first campaign, 20 goals across all competitions. 50% of those were penalties. Last season, 50% of his goals in the Premier League were penalties, so he's a bit of a penalty expert, but he has been able to pick up some really interesting positions. In between the lines, he's got excellent tight control, he's very aggressive, almost too aggressive at times. We've seen some of those swinging elbows. I overall really like João Pedro at Newcastle because he could play as a support role to Alexander Isak, or if Isak needs a week off, he could play as the 9. He might be able to play off the right. He's very, very versatile. Even at £60 million, I think the ceiling João Pedro has is a little bit underrated. Manchester United fans, let me know what you think about the move for Ugo Ehick. This has really picked up some momentum. Ever since Delap's gone to Chelsea, it feels like Victor Gyokeres has rejected the chance to join Manchester United. Moves for players like Ugo Ehick might well come to the forefront. The biggest issue for United here is going to be the fee. At €100 million fee that Frankfurt have set, United just aren't going to be able to afford that. So if it stays at that price, I don't see a world in which this one happens. But as an overall profile, there's a lot to like. In fact, in terms of sort of under 23 strikers in Europe, nobody profiles like Ugo Ehick. This is a player whose game has really developed in the Bundesliga. He had the blip when he went to PSG, but even when he was at PSG, his ceiling was thought to be super high amongst a lot of people in football. And this season, I've got some of his numbers up in front of me here. He's in the top 5% of European strikers for shot-creating actions, expected goals, expected assists, successful take-ons, progressive carries. The guy is so well-rounded. Now, I think United fans maybe have a bit of an issue with signing another young striker. They've tried that with Rasmus Højlund. I think if you ask most Manchester United fans, they want somebody experienced, particularly Premier League experienced, who could come in and hit the ground immediately and allow Højlund to play a support role to him. But who is that in the market? I think there's a real problem with United and the striker market right now, with Gyokeres not going to be joining, with Liam Delap going to Chelsea. The options are looking more and more limited, and players like Ugo Ehick could really come to the fore, particularly if Frankfurt drop their asking price. If they do drop their asking price, it would be a good move. But as we stand here today, I think it's probably unrealistic with the fee. Bradley Barca is being linked to Bayern Munich. Let's be real. I'm really confused about the amount of links we're seeing with Barca away from PSG. I understand that Usman Dembele, Kvaradona, Desiree Doué are currently all ahead of him in the pecking order at PSG. But are people forgetting he put up 24 goal involvements last season? By the way, this is one of the faces of the PSG project. They have gone away from signing stars and gone to the French youth. Barca is the epitome of that. The idea of selling Barca because he might not have a role every single week is madness to me. He's still one of the most talented young left wingers on the planet. He's young enough that he shouldn't have to start every game and play every single minute, if we're honest. His ability in the 1v1s, his carry distance, his physical power and pace stand out. I think PSG selling Barca is only going to happen if it is a plus €100 million move. I don't see why. It's not like they need the money, is it? I don't see why on earth they would let him go. So for me, the idea of him going to Bayern just doesn't make sense, despite the fact Bayern do have that vacancy on the left wing with the likes of Leroy Sané not choosing to renew his contract. I can just see them trying and getting rejected for Barca. How about Jack Grealish going to Everton? What on earth is happening here? Left out of the Club World Cup squad, 29 years old now, earning a reported £300,000 a week. And his Premier League minutes have really been on the decline. 7 Premier League starts last season, 10 the season before that. He's come out publicly on Instagram, in comment sections, to say, well, I haven't had loads of opportunities to show what I can do. And I think that's fair enough, but certainly players have stepped up above him in the pecking order at Manchester City. The likes of Doku, Savino, Marmoush. With the arrivals they've got coming in the form of Cherki, it's really hard to see where Jack Grealish gets any minutes next season. So for that reason, I do imagine him leaving, but I don't imagine him leaving to Everton. I think the wage we're talking about here is unrealistic for the Toffees to afford. Look, I think they have recently taken a member of Manchester City's scouting and recruitment team from City to Everton. Does that mean that Jack Grealish is going to go there? I'm pretty unconvinced. His output in recent years, he's not scored over 5 Premier League goals since he joined Manchester City in a single season. So for the outlay it would cost to get him out of Man City, maybe 40-50 million pounds, the wages that Everton probably can't afford, his fitness and his output, a lot of this just doesn't make sense to me. I also think Jack Grealish, if he leaves City, is going to want a club maybe slightly higher in the European echelons than Everton, who right now are sort of battling at the lower end of the Premier League table. I don't see it. Do you? I mean, do you guys actually see Everton going for Jack Grealish this summer? According to a lot of French media reports, Manchester United back in for Victor Osimhen now that the Victor Gyokeres deal has collapsed. It's feeling more and more like the suitors for Osimhen are on the ground level. Saudi move hasn't happened and isn't going to happen. I think if that was going to happen, it would have happened in time for the Club World Cup, but it didn't. They were offering him a reported 40 million euros a season, and he was saying no. The links to Galatasaray popped up. They've gone a little bit cool again, though, haven't they? Wouldn't be a huge surprise to me if he did go back there, but with the arrival of Leroy Sané on a reported 500,000 euros a week, can they afford to do both Sané and Osimhen? So with his options looking a little bit more limited, maybe no Gala, maybe no Saudi, Chelsea have gone for Delap. I'm not too sure where Victor Osimhen's going to end up, because he's definitely going to leave Napoli. There's no doubt about that. And at a reported £65 million, when we're looking at a player here who got 37 in 41 games at Gala last season, 99.8th percentile of non-penalty expected goals. The guy creates chances out of nothing. A shot volume monster who's really physical and still only 26. I think the later in the window this goes, the more likely Manchester United could become a destination. As we sit here today, I still think it's unrealistic. I think if he was turning down £400,000-500,000 a week at Galatasaray or at Saudi, Manchester United's new wage structure feels like it would be buckled by a player like Osimhen. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, prior to Ineos, I could see this being more likely. But unless later in the window, he's still floating about, Manchester United still can't find a number 9, that wage might just start tumbling down if he wants a Premier League move. And Man United might have some players to deal with Napoli. They were interested in Alejandro Garnacho in January, don't forget. This one might pop up to good move. Jamie Gittins was really close to joining Chelsea, I think. 2 or 3 bids went in, trying to get him in time for the Club World Cup. It didn't happen. I don't think this move is totally off the table, though. Just because he didn't sign in that small transfer window that would allow Chelsea to take him, I would not be surprised to see them come back to the table later on in the summer. They've clearly got a vacancy at left wing with Jadon Sancho leaving the club, Mykhailo Mudryk still suspended. And Jamie Gittins' profile fits almost exactly what Chelsea have been trying to do in the market. An emerging youngster who has a super high ceiling. Goal output was great in the Bundesliga. Nobody put up more dribbles than him in 2025. In a 1v1 situation, he's lightning, he's got English status, speaks English, and Dortmund do tend to do deals. So I think later on in the window, this happens. I'm going to predict Gittins does go to Chelsea. Tottenham are trying to hijack Manchester United's move for Bryan Mbeumo. Now, according to reports, Mbeumo does still favour the move to United, but with Thomas Frank going to Spurs, that could be a defining factor, and the fact that Spurs are reportedly offering £70 million for his services should not go unnoticed. Now, is this a power play by Brentford to try and get Manchester United back to the table with more money? Is it a legitimate link? For me, it feels a little bit lazy. Just because Thomas Frank's gone there, I'm seeing all of the ex-Brentford players being linked with the club. Nathan Collins, Johan Visser, Bryan Mbeumo, Norgard. I would be really surprised to see him take too many players out of that Brentford side. You look at some of the players he tried to recruit originally, the likes of Brennan Johnson, with Mertesacker joining the side as well, I think he will be looking at the team, especially in forward areas, and thinking, yeah, maybe one or two could come in, but is it just too easy to see Bryan Mbeumo? Yeah, he was amazing at Brentford under Thomas Frank. Let's just put him straight into that side. Maybe I'm overthinking this because he would be a good signing. 20 Premier League goals last season. Let's not mess about. Even the year before when he put up 10, that was with a significant injury midway through the season. I think he would have gone close to 15, 16 goals then too. It would be a good move. It would be a really good move. And I think I am slightly concerned he's going to end up at Tottenham now. James Trafford to Newcastle, picking up more pace. Newcastle are trying to do some business, but struggling a little bit, I think, in terms of who they want to sign first. Who's the priority target? Newcastle fans, if you're watching this, who's your priority target? Would it be a goalkeeper like Trafford? I think for me, that would probably be a little bit further down the pecking order. He's an outstanding goalkeeper. The record at Burnley last season to concede 16 league goals, I think it's the best in British league history, should not go unnoticed. And his XG overperformance shouldn't go unnoticed as well. They should have conceded way more than 16. But Trafford was on fire. He's great with his feet. Obviously coming through that Manchester City academy proves that he's got that ability to play out from the back, which I don't think Nick Pope has. At £30 million even, I think it's a good move. But I don't think it's top priority for Newcastle, if I'm honest. Sven Ipan, who was basically joining Aston Villa, the move has collapsed. He's going to end up at Manchester City now. His medical is next week. Girona, who are part of the Manchester City football group, were also interested in him in January. They missed out to Villa. Villa moves collapsed. He's going to end up at Manchester City. City are doing some really interesting business with young players, and Nipan is the latest in this mould. His profile is this sort of attacking 8. You know, he's the youngest player in Rosenborg history, very comfortable on the ball. I've seen a lot of people talking about him being in a similar style to Martin Ødegaard. Don't think he's quite as techie as Martin Ødegaard in his ball movements. In between the lines, he's a little bit more physical. Even at 15, he looked like quite a powerful player, didn't he? Playing against men. You know, if City are signing you, even at 12 million quid, this is going to be a good move, isn't it? Jarell Quanser has reportedly become Bayer Leverkusen's top defensive target under Erik ten Hag. A reported £40 million fee has been mentioned. And last season wasn't great for him. I think it was 4 Premier League starts. 3 of those came in the last 4 games when Liverpool had already won the league. He started the opening day, got dropped, got hooked, didn't he? Didn't really feature because of the excellent partnership between Virgil van Dijk and Konate. So minutes were very limited. I think if Liverpool could get a £40 million fee for him, they would be absolutely delighted and would probably put that towards a new centre-back. Despite the level Quanser could get to, and I think it is really high, he is still somewhat of an unproven prospect. It was only 1,200 minutes in his breakthrough campaign in the final season under Jurgen Klopp, where I thought he looked pretty imperious. Now for Bayer Leverkusen, this would be a lot of money to spend on a centre-back. Jonathan Tah has left, he's gone to Bayern Munich, so they're reportedly seeing Quanser as the fill-in for Jonathan Tah. Now, Jonathan Tah put up more minutes last season in the Bundesliga than any other Bayer Leverkusen player. So to ask Quanser, who has barely scratched the surface of 1,500 Premier League minutes, to do that in a team that has also lost Frimpong, Wirtz, Xabi Alonso, I think it's a big ask. I think it would be an okay deal. But for Liverpool, I mean, it's good money. Kepa is on his way to Arsenal for a fee about £5 million. I think this is okay business. You know, he's only a backup goalkeeper. He's not going to come in and start over David Raya, but he provides great experience. He overperformed his post-shot expected goals last campaign at Bournemouth. And when Kepa doesn't have to play every week, I know for a fact behind the scenes, he's a really influential personality. I think the idea of having him and Raya as 1 and 2 is definitely a big upgrade on Raya and Neto, who they had last campaign, who was cup-tied, pretty much a wasted loan spot that. I like Kepa to Arsenal for that fee. What's the downside here? It's an absolutely fine move. Let's finish with Nico Williams reportedly getting close to joining Barcelona. Now, Bayern Munich earlier in the week were much talked about. A move in that left wing spot to replace Leroy Sané for Nico Williams. There was even reports that they met his release clause. But Nico Williams' agent this week has met with Deco. He's reportedly dropped his asking price in terms of wages. The release clause is absolutely fine, isn't it? I think it's around 50 million. If that is true, I think Nico Williams to Barcelona would be a wow. I mean, the options they would have in wide areas, Nico Williams, Rafinha, Lamine Yamal. The idea of having Spain's starting wide men at Barcelona and Nico Williams and Yamal, who are best friends, unbelievable in ball carrying situations. You know, Nico Williams in the top 2 or 3% for successful take-ons and dribble success rate last campaign. His output slightly dropped. I think that was probably symptomatic of Bilbao as a team. But what we've seen from Williams under the spotlight for Spain, it's still a scary, scary prospect. I love the idea of him and Yamal in the same team. Let's finish with a bonus transfer, and that's Victor Gyokeres to Arsenal. Fabrizio Romano has said his priority is to join the Gunners. No particular surprise. I said earlier that it doesn't feel like he's going to go to Manchester United. His goal scoring rate is ridiculous, and clearly Berta, behind the scenes, is pushing this one forward. I don't think we should totally discount Benjamin Sesko either, because even with that really eye-watering price tag, Arsenal have been interested for a long time, so it wouldn't be a huge surprise for them to end up with him. But it does feel like the situation with Victor Gyokeres is really coming to a head now. This public battle between him, his agent and Sporting around the release clause, the gentleman's agreement, the agent now saying he's got it in writing that Sporting will allow him to leave for €70 million. That feels like it's building to a point where he's about to join a club, and a club is interested in him at a €70 million fee, but Sporting want even more. There's no point discussing his statistics because it's absolutely ridiculous, and I still think that whoever goes in at Arsenal in that number 9 role, be it Sesko, be it Gyokeres, is going to be a resounding success. The system Mikel Arteta has created is so good. You look at Kai Havertz's numbers, playing as an unorthodox number 9 there. I think truly he would have got 15, 16 goals this season in the Premier League if it wasn't for the injury. Mikel Merino ended up on 7, playing as a number 9. The chances are created so regularly, be it Rice's deep crosses, Bukayo Saka's ability to get to the dead ball line, Ødegaard's little slip passes through the lines, that whether it's Gyokeres or Sesko, I just don't see a world in which they fail. But Arsenal fans, which one do you want? Would you prefer Gyokeres? I think he's the more guaranteed goal scorer right now. He's got experience in England. Or the slightly more unproven, could have a higher ceiling, Benjamin Sesko. Let me know in the comments below. So there was my tier list of some of the biggest transfer rumours out there right now. What do you think of it at home? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.